Let's talk about some basic concepts in acid-base. The human body works best at a pH of 7.4. This pH is extremely tightly regulated by the kidney and by the lung. The range of pHs that you will see in the human body in normal patients is 7.35 to 7.45. Any deviation above or below 7.35 or 7.45 can lead to significant sequelae. There are two systems that work together to try to maintain the pH of 7.40. Respiratory and metabolic. In terms of the respiratory, the lungs regulate the PCO2 by changing respiratory rate or what's called the tidal volume or the depth of respiration. So tidal volume. One can change the PCO2. So with an increased respiratory rate or an increased tidal volume, PCO2 will go down because the lung is blowing off PCO2. The goal is to keep the PCO2 very close to 40 millimeters of mercury. In terms of the metabolic system, the kidneys, they regulate bicarb. And the bicarb is tightly regulated to be approximately 24 milliequivalents per liter. Again, the respiratory system and the kidneys work together to try to keep PCO2 40, bicarb at 24, and working together to keep the pH at 7.40. There is an equilibrium between CO2 and bicarb. CO2 plus water is in equilibrium with bicarb and acid, H+. Where does acid come from? It comes from your diet, mostly. This equilibrium works towards keeping CO2 and bicarb in a very tight range. So again, the lungs blow off PCO2 or retain PCO2. The kidneys work to try to retain or get rid of bicarb, depending on the situation. The goal is to keep the pH as close to 7.40 as possible. With regard to pH, pH is directly related to the concentration of bicarb relative to the PCO2. This is the simplified Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, which is essential by understanding this relationship between pH, bicarb, and PCO2. You'll be able to solve basic acid-base problems with ease. If we have a pH HCO3, decreased bicarb will lead to a decreased pH according to the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, and that is a metabolic acidosis. A bicarb that's increased will lead to an increase in pH, and that is known as a metabolic alkalosis. An decrease in the PCO2 will correspond to an increase in the pH, which is known as a respiratory alkalosis. If we have the scenario where the PCO2 is elevated, then the pH will be low, and that's called respiratory acidosis. So by looking at the relationship between the pH, the HCO3, and the PCO2, we're able to solve simple acid-base problems.